Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Bits episode. Super exciting because the interwebs in the Rivian forums and the Rivian Xsphere and the Rivian Reddit has been blowing up today because there are some media getting a chance to drive the Rivian R2. And I am so excited to see the reviews and see how this car performs out in the real world. It's been so long without an update on what this vehicle is actually going to be in its series production form and how it's going to drive. And we are going to find out, it sounds like in a very short period of time. So if I go through just to kind of reiterate before we get everyone's impressions, I'm going to pull up on the screen here what the Rivian R2 is, and then we'll show sort of the buzz that's been happening. And you can see some people are posting and removing their posts as well, because Rivian's probably trying to keep some of this quiet. But hey, it got out there, and that's why we've got to make a video. We can't just let this hang out wide open. So this is the Rivian R2. It's going to be Rivian's super exciting, smaller electric SUV. There's a full tour already on an Out of Spec reviews channel that we've filmed on this car, and it goes through all the nooks and crannies and features. However, that was on a pre-series prototype, and many things change as you get closer to production. That was done well over a year ago, and who knows what the car is going to look like as we are getting very close to the launch of series production. Now, the R2 is also launching very close in timing to the BMW iX3, the Volvo EX60, the Mercedes GLC electric, and of course, the new refresh Model Y is already out on the market. How is it going to hold up? What are the specs going to be? I actually have a whole video coming in just a couple days on at least the numbers on paper that we're aware of on how the cars stack up against each other. It's honestly not looking that good for R2 at the moment. It's looking a little bit weak sauce from the numbers. However, I will say we ran a poll online. Most of our viewers are still primarily interested in the R2 over the other models, even though at least the initial impression on paper is it's going to perform a little bit worse. Logan, before we get into anything, what is your impression of R2? And then maybe you can kind of spill a little bit of the beans of what's been going on today.
Yeah, so crazy day today in the Rivian community. My impression of R2 overall to start is that, like you said, on paper, with what's, come out recently since the R2 has been announced a while ago, it's maybe not the best on paper. But I think the reason everybody is so excited for the R2 is that we're all sort of hoping that Rivian special sauce is continued at a lower price point. And so I think there's a lot on the table here, because if it drives like a Rivian and it feels like a Rivian, and you can get into that Rivian experience for a lower price point, I think that's exactly what they're aiming to deliver, and we'll see if that is true with these first drives. A little bit about what came out today. We had some interesting leaks and some things that maybe we're not supposed to know that came out, that apparently first drives have happened and that they will be already filmed and then announced soon with an embargo. So I'll let you take it from there, Kyle.
Yeah, so you can see our buddy Chris Hilbert, who is a sort of Rivian enthusiast and follows the company super closely. Kind of being quiet, but saying looks like the cat's out of the bag. And this all stems from a podcast that I actually started. It's called the Inside EVs podcast. And back in the very early days of Out of Spec, we ran the Inside EVs podcast in collaboration with them and started that. And then Patrick took over, and it's a great site, and we're really great friends with them. But they leaked on their show today that Patrick drove the Rivian R2 this week and has content coming very soon. And I can show you that because our buddy Isaiah on Rivian Updates actually took the clip, and he says the Rivian R2 is expected to officially debut in just a few days, as confirmed in a recent post from Inside EVs. And you can see here, we're not going to actually play it with audio and anything, but this is the actual conversation that he had taken off of their YouTube to show, hey, this is where the announcement actually happened. This is all public. It's all on X, and we've got to share it. There's no way we can hide, with this crazy cool information being out there. It's so exciting for all of us who Love Rivians and can't wait to hear about what the R2 has to be. Now, Patrick, of course, didn't go in and share what it was like to drive, but you can kind of tell from his facial expression, it's going to be pretty exciting. And you would expect that to be the case. Rivian, of course, is going to, put their best foot forward for these initial early reviews, have probably really nice cars ready to go, a great experience for everyone to be able to drive them. And I just can't wait. So let's talk on that topic a little bit more. Actually, hey, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit on what do you think we're going to see in these reviews? Are they going to be full tours? I heard Doug DeMuro mentioned he was talking to Rivian as well in the background. Are these going to be full tours? Patrick's clearly saying he drove it. What are we going to see later on with all of these videos?
Yeah. I think we're going to be getting some initial driving impressions. That's kind of what I'm thinking, since he did say that he drove it. We've already kind of seen what it looks like, but maybe we'll get a key into that software and what they're going to be offering. Will it be any different than the R1? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting so far.
Yeah, Jose posted as well online a little bit about it, but then actually removed some of the stuff from Rivian Tracker covering it. So you can see that Rivian's trying to kind of like, whoa, Patrick probably wasn't supposed to say anything. But it's not just Patrick, of course. In the industry, I've heard rumblings about this drive. We knew that this was going to kind of happen in the background. And it's a really exciting time for Rivian. But it just seems like it's still early days and we're not 100% sure what's coming. You can see here, you see a bunch of R2s that are out on the road going for a photo or video shoot. And perhaps these are the vehicles that everyone was actually driving. I guess we don't know for sure, but you can see 3 R2s right there on the roads, clearly ones we hadn't seen before. Maybe that first one was at the unveil, but it's hard to say.
I think those are the R2D2 style ones. I think the first one's the blue one that we saw at AI Day.
Yeah, very, very possible. Very possible. And then you'll see over here as well, there's more and more stories. So, like, Rivian has really calculated the story rollout of the R2 and when certain stories should be told and which outlets they should be told with. And clearly, they're sprinkling out, little information. Here's a little bit more behind the scenes of the production. And then you'll come here and you can see Jose actually did a little Model Y versus R2 comparison based off of everything that we know going forwards, which is pretty exciting. But even more than that is there's some actual hardcore data that Colton was able to find on a Better Route Planner. Now, Rivian owns this service called abetterrouteplanner.com. Colton, maybe you can tell us a little bit about it and what's going on here.
Yeah, so actually I have to give credit to this to Hilby, Chris Hilbert. He posted this earlier on, which I think this is really interesting that this is already on a Better Route Planner. So this, if you don't know, is basically a service you can subscribe to and essentially plan your routes out. It's really nice for cars that have Apple CarPlay. It's just right there. I use it in my EV6 pretty much all the time. And it basically has the battery pack size. You can do live data off the vehicle. And this popped up today and I was like, that seems a little interesting. So as you can see on the side there, it's showing R2 2026. We've got large pack, dual motor, rear wheel drive, tri-motor, dual motor, standard pack, and 95 kilowatt hours saying for large pack and 75 kilowatt hour for standard pack. What do you think on size of that, Kyle?
That feels a bit bigger than I was expecting. We knew Rivian was going to be going with the 4695 form factor cell. We are still unsure of the exact chemistry that they're going with in that cell. They could choose a more power dense cell or an energy dense cell, and they can alter their charging performance or output, thermal longevity versus the amount of energy density and range that you can get. There's always trade-offs when it comes to picking the cell and designing the system around that particular cell and the entire battery pack. 75 kilowatt hours is basically what a Model Y has. It's about 5 kilowatt hours less than a Model Y premium or performance. And you know what? For a standard pack, that feels very reasonable, especially if the price is in check. I mean, this is going to probably be a little bit more money than the Model Y, I would guess. I have no idea. But I think that feels pretty good. 95 kilowatt hours. Now we're talking pretty good specs there. However, that is going to be large pack, You can probably get large pack rear drive is what this is saying. Again, we don't know if any of this is true or not. That's going to be the Range King special. Then you'll have large pack dual motor, which is long range all wheel drive. Then you'll have large pack, and that dual motor will probably have a performance variant and a standard variant, if I had to guess, based off of what they were doing with R1. And here they're saying there's going to be a tri-motor all-wheel drive, which is unusual that a Rivian-owned website is confirming the tri-motor. I thought they may not do the tri-motor for R2, but it sounds like that's still coming along. Colton, what's your impression on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything we've still been seeing on this. The only point of contention I want to say here is 75 kilowatt hours. You've got a big box, essentially. I'm curious how they're going to get 300 miles of range out of that. Of course, the lower trims could get less, but that seems quite efficient for 300 miles of range. I don't know. That's just my thoughts straight off the bat.
Yeah, it's a good point because this has such a tall frontal area and it's not that small of a vehicle. Let's be honest. It's smaller than the R1, but it's still not that small and it's very boxy. Model Y is the most efficient SUV we've ever tested, and that looks like an egg, and they gave up a lot of the styling just to get that efficiency. This is looking really nice, but you know for sure it's not going to be as efficient as the Y just based on the aero profile of the vehicle alone. So you got to put in a bit bigger of a battery pack. Now, in the Model Y standard, for example, just apples to apples, that uses a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, 69.5. This is only 5 kilowatt hours more, Colton. And I think that means this is not going to hit 300 miles of range in the EPA cycle unless you get the large pack and maybe the large pack dual motor. For sure, large rear, it has to hit 300 miles. They need a car to do that. And 95 kilowatt hours in the EPA cycle, depending on which one they run, they'll be able to manage it with 95 kilowatt hours. But man, that seems it's a good point you bring up. Andreas, what do you think about the battery pack sizing as someone who road trips a lot?
Yeah, I've just been, thinking about what would I get. I think I would get the large pack dual motor, just like my Model 3, if you can compare that. But yeah, especially the 75 kilowatt hours seems very low, very small battery for a vehicle with those, dimensions and, as you just said, boxy design. I was actually hoping that the upper trims get up to 400 miles. That will, can we get 400 miles out of a 95 kilowatt hour battery in an R2? No way, right? So I was hoping the standard pack would achieve those 300 miles, right? Because that's what the R2 is advertised as, right? 300 miles, $45,000 starting price.
Yeah, so let me show you that right here. It's shown here 300 plus miles, 0 to 60 under 3 seconds. But Rivian does the thing that's always so annoying where they say across the model line. You can't buy one car that always does all the specs that they say. And that's super deceptive.
Okay. It's like Tesla giving the the gas savings and all this stuff.
Yes.
It's just as annoying. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was hoping the smallest trim would get 300 miles. That's how I read this, right? But maybe it's not.
I think this on the highway, realistically, let's just do some back of the napkin math as people who have road tripped a ton in many different vehicles and many Rivians. Like the most efficient Rivian right now gets about like 2.2, 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour at speed on the highway. Around town, you could see 3 miles per kilowatt hour in like Scott's car. She has the most efficient spec you can get. This, I think, is going to be around 3 miles per kilowatt hour, 2.7 to 3, probably on highway driving, I would guess. So let's just be really nice to it and say 75 kilowatt hours times 3 is 225 miles of highway driving from 100 to dead, assuming those ABRP numbers are correct. They could be completely wrong, and we're just wasting time here spinning tires. But let's just take that same number, right, Andreas, and say 95 kilowatt hours times 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which you're going to get less than 3 miles per kilowatt hour if you're boogieing. Still not even 300 miles on the highway in this thing.
And now at wind or cold weather or, Scott, how did your R1S do in the range test? Pretty good, right? Wasn't it? I thought
it did really well. I think I got 380 around 380
right?
miles at 70 miles an hour in our Colorado range test. I have not run
Right.
it since we've been here in North Carolina at sea level. But yeah,
But this
I mean,
one is a
mine's
100. Sorry, this one is a
no, go ahead.
140 kilowatt hour battery, the R1S,
Mhm.
around that, right? 140.
145.
Yeah.
Yeah, usable.
But I think
So
there's a
way
point
more, also bigger car. But yeah.
to
Go
be
ahead, Scott.
made. I'm wondering if they're not thinking that like this is your road tripper. This is your like smaller around town car. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
'Cause
like it's still going to be a $45,000 it's going to be 55 grand probably by the
Yeah.
time you spec it, maybe more for the one that we don't know what pricing is, but I'm going to say when we order ours and we have one of the very first reservations and we'll be hopefully buying one of the very first ones, I'm prepared to drop 60K on this thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be more. I think it's going to be every bit of money we just got out of selling our R1S LFP. I think it's not
Would
going to
you
be that
drop
cheap.
60 grand if it doesn't get 300 miles of EPA range?
Yeah, we have to test it. I don't care what the car does. We'll show what it does. But would I recommend it? I don't
That's a
know.
good question, though.
Yeah, it needs to do
That's a good question, though, 'cause
300
I'm also
miles
considering.
on the highway.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Exactly.
Andreas.
That's a good question, Scott, because I am also considering getting an R2, next to my Model 3, just one bigger one. But would I be ready to spend 60 grand on a car that doesn't do 300 miles that comes out in 2026?
I
That'd be a
wouldn't.
hard sell, honestly. No,
I wouldn't
because I'm on a road
pay
trip,
that kind
right?
of money. Yeah.
Okay, so now that we're
it-
talking like nicely spec'd R2, for example, think about the other cars that are nicely spec'd in the category. So you can get a Volvo XC60 or EX60 P10, which is 60 grand for a mid spec, and that is 95 kilowatt hours. So same size battery, probably similar efficiency, but 370 kilowatt charging and 15 minutes 10 to 80. That's going to be a monster. This is a 400 volt car going up against 800 volt vehicles that are going to be in the same class. Then you have iX3, which gives you 112 kilowatt hours usable. BMW just updated the usable capacity for 60 grand for a dual motor all wheel drive. That's going to be a 400 kilowatt charging car with 400 plus miles of EPA range, easy, probably 350 to 380 on the highway, I would guess, in the iX3. And then you have the GLC, which is going to be a bit more expensive and a bit weaker in the specs, but still 320 kilowatt charging, 95 kilowatt hour pack. The list goes on and on. It really seems like Rivian has either got to keep the price in check, because in my impression, the brand excitement, the image, the quality can only go so far. If you're going up against vehicles that can do some things twice as good as this thing, that's going to be a real tough sell. However, Logan, I want to pick your brain on this, because if you parked all of those cars we've talked about, Model Y, iX3, EX60, GLC, and R2 in a line, my heart is with the R2 because I love my R1 so much. And I know Scott loves her R1 so much. So you're a Tesla owner. I could see you becoming an R2, maybe performance guy at some point. With all of those other models in mind, would you take the compromises and go for Rivian, have that software first company? What's your impression?
Yeah, so I think this is a great point. And I actually want to stray away from what I would personally pick because I think it's not a good example. But so I would take an iX3 because I'm a BMW guy, I'm a performance guy. If I can only take one car, it has to handle the best possible. But I think that that's an amazing point, which is that we often, are like, let's quantify everything. But, the alternative is actually exactly how I think of a daily, which is I really don't care how much range it has, as long as I can get home and like I can drive maybe, like 2 hours round trip for like daily driving is like the most that I'll need. If I can make it home, I care about everything else, price included, and how the vehicle drives and the whole experience. And so I think honestly the bulk of Rivian owners are probably concerned with the experience. They love how the exterior looks, they love how the interior looks. They like feeling like it's a like real SUV. And so I think a lot of the competitors don't meet that that standard that a lot of Rivian owners like.
I would agree. It gives you this ruggedized sort of premium, not pretentious vibe. That's really cool. I mean, Colton, you use your EV6 very similar to how Colton's kind of suggesting to think about this R2, which is, you plug it in home every day. You've got you can drive it, to Denver and back, to the airport and back. You never have to fast charge it, even though that's a great fast charging car. But I know R2 is on your short list for a while. So what's your thought after everything coming out? Where's your head at around this car?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I think as a Colorado native and someone still living in Colorado, I don't think I have an option to get anything else but a Rivian, because you just see them absolutely everywhere here. I mean, it is like we have gone from Subaru to Rivian. That is just straight up here. I think it's interesting looking at the different vehicles out there that are on sale. For me personally, the R2 speaks to me quite a bit more. Whether it's better or worse on paper, I'm not necessarily sure is going to dissuade people from getting this. I don't think, R1 platform was necessarily class leading in general. I mean, you can still see how many more R1Ss are being sold over something like Lucid Gravity. And then, R1T was interesting to see. They were, first mover advantage into the electric truck space, and things have gotten rocky there. But I think in general, I think R2 is going to speak to a lot more people. That's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. We'll see how sales numbers are. For me, I think the coolest thing, and I hope they continue to bring this, is having the glass slide down on the back, because I just want a photo of my 2 golden retrievers sticking their head out the back of the R2, just slobbering all over the car, and be like, this is the dream right here.
Andreas, I know you've got to leave now because we've hit your time limit, but final thoughts on the media drive starting for R2 specifically. What are you going to be looking for in these upcoming reviews that's going to sway you to say, hey, I'm really into this? Or are there any deal breakers for you?
Range, as always. I love the range. That's what I'm most curious about. And also the software. Just watching Isaiah's video a little bit, the first 2-3 minutes, he's going over the UI design a little bit, and I love it, what I'm seeing, especially the map design changed a little bit. It seems more refined. So I would say, yeah, range and UI, and just how it feels like, right? I mean, Rivians have always felt great, but for example, the Lucid Gravity, totally different car, but I loved how premium it felt. And I wonder if the R2, with Rivian now having grown as a company and learned a lot, I wonder if the R2 is going to feel similarly, just more premium. Yeah, so interior, software, range. I was actually wondering if you could reshare the screen one more time, Cal. Show the ABRP. I better rock planner. What's the drop down where it says battery capacity? What happens? Oh, okay, nothing. All right. Yeah, I thought there would be more options, Nothing.
Yeah, I tried that out earlier. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Andreas.
This is my 2 cents. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Enjoy your night. Have fun. And thanks for joining for the show. Okay, so now that Andreas is gone, okay, can we talk about this really quick? So there's going to be a bunch of videos. From what it sounds like is there's quite a few people who drove this thing, like in the zone. That's the vibe. Colton, what are we going to hear about? Because there's so many different types of reviewers out there. Of course, there's those that will, drive anything, and they're like, maybe not driving enthusiasts, but they just want to make sure that it feels like a normal car and it doesn't do anything weird or put it in a dangerous situation. And I feel like that type of reviewer is perfect for like 90% of car buyers who just need to know it's going to handle better than a RAV4. It's going to have good acceleration. And that's honestly, if it just drives better than a RAV4, this thing's going to sell like a ton. But then you'll get into people that are like, the Jason Camisas out there or the Chris Harrises that can really articulate how a vehicle drives wonderfully. Those are the people I always look to when I'm, researching a car to buy and say, oh, I want to know steering feel, throttle response, one pedal drive tuning, ABS feedback. How does ESP feel? Does it off throttle rotate? What's the behavior of the vehicle? And to me, that matters so much. And that can tell a story as to how it will drive daily driving. Does it porpoise? Because R1S is known for pretty bad ride quality. Is that going to transfer through? There's no air suspension here. Are they going to tune the coils correctly? So these are some of my questions. I know you also consume a lot of car review content. Who are you going to be keeping an eye on, and maybe not specifically, but what are you going to be looking for?
Well, I think always first off, when a new car comes out, I always look to Daddy Doug, Mr. Doug DeMuro. I always love his quirks and features because he always finds like the most weird things you could ever find in a car and is like explains it in a very unique way. I always like watching, Straight Pipes, Throttle House, guys like that. And like you said, Jason Camisa is hands down like unbelievable resource. I can't wait to see his drag racing thing with the R2. And I really am curious to see, just in general, not only the specs, but how people perceive this car. Because I think we all know sitting here, and I think a lot of our viewers know, this is a big deal for Rivian. This is a car that is going to either make or break. I hate to say it like that, but it is a big make or break for Rivian. So I hope to see a mix of both those quick hitting, 10, 12, 15-minute reviews that can give us, here's the stats, here's what it looks like, some nice B-roll, things like that. And then we get the driving nerd data of like, okay, this is, great on throttle, off throttle, the steering's good, the suspension's good. That's one of the biggest things I'm curious to see is how they've tuned the suspension on this, going from air suspension, hydraulics, all of that stuff to, normal spring over coil. I think complexity, obviously this is a cost-saving vehicle, I think is a good thing. I'm anxious to see how it drives because we've been seeing as of recent, Model Y Juniper, Model 3 Highland, their new frequency intelligent dampers on those are unbelievably impressive. Lucid being the same way without air suspension. Some of their air, I should say, not gravity. But I mean, the suspension technology is just getting so impressive lately.
Hey, Scott, is there any review or is there anything you could hear about on R2 that would make you want one over your R1S? For those who don't know, Scott drives a Gen 2 R1S and is a pretty big fan. And I mean, she keeps thinking maybe she'll drive an R2, but I'm thinking, look, as soon as you see that thing, you're going to look at all the ways that it's worse than your R1 and go, oh, no way.
I'm going to feel like it's like so much less premium. The only thing that I am curious about is that suspension. Is it more stable? Because my car was nervous in the beginning when I got it. Rivian fixed it and now it's been fine. What would make me want to get an R2 and give up my R1? I can't foresee. I mean, the window's cool. The rear window that rolls down is cool, but like that wouldn't make me switch from having my car that does all the things to then downgrade and get less. So I don't see that happening, but I know that car buying is an emotional decision and I'm emotionally attached to my R1.
Logan, what are the main points for you personally? I know you're thinking general consumer, but you're here. I want to know what you think. What are you going to be looking for in reviews to try to get information from?
Yeah, so like Colton and like many of us, obviously Jason Camisa is a wonderful resource. I'll be looking out. Would love to see his first drive. Beyond that, Savage Geese is a big one for me, and I really want to see it up on the lifts. I want to see everything they did in the underbody, how it's different from R1. Two things I'll add in here. One would be something kind of on Scott's note, which is one of the only obvious features that I've seen personally in, just the full tours that we have so far is we do know the scroll wheels are coming to the steering wheel. Something pretty subtle, but I think for somebody like our audience, we will appreciate, they look amazing. And so I'm super excited for those. Beyond that, I think the point that I'll make is that when we look at these first drives, it's interesting because Rivian as a company, from a consumer facing side has one platform right now. And most of us in the community are in love with that platform, but it's just a price problem for the masses. And so it's an interesting perspective because ideally this comes out and it's the price they said it would be. And it's like just a small R1S. And so if it is, if it's just like, coil suspension R1S that is, smaller in height and length, they're going to sell. We're going to love it. It's going to be great. And so that's kind of the lens I feel like a lot of us are looking at it from, of like, all right, how much compromise is there from the R1S? To Scott's point, does it feel significantly less premium? And so a lot is riding on like the comparison test of R1S versus R2, is the price delta worth it?
Totally agree. That's going to be the next big question is like, do you get in at the bottom end of the R1S, which is probably not going to be that much more than the R2 maxed out? Maybe there'll even be some overlap there. We'll have to see. Yeah, I'm so excited to see these. I mean, really will be glued to my screen when the embargo lifts, watching everyone's content. And then, of course, we'll probably all get back here and share what the consensus is, because I think we all watch enough car content to know who's legit, who's not, where do we get our information from. We can read between the lines. I know a lot of these people personally, and so I can be like, yeah, let's trust this guy for driving dynamics and don't listen to that guy about range or charging, et cetera, et cetera. So I can help weed through a lot of that stuff when the time comes. But yeah, I'm super, super excited for all of this. R2's finally coming along. And yeah, we'll be covering it as closely as we can here, just like we do with any new electric vehicle. So thanks to you guys for joining. And thanks to Andreas also. He had to blast out. But yep, we'll see you all on another one again soon. It sounds like R2 coverage will be ramping up here any moment. See you on another one again soon. Bye-bye.